Okay,
You should get on.
got it. Share screen. Oh, you got to give me permission to share.
Oh. Mission, is that
That should do it.
okay?
I just got to figure out where I'm going. So that should be it. Go to the right place. This one should have got set up, but I was out doing stuff. All right, where is the, okay. All right, so we even have a semi-official slideshow to look at.
job.
We're not used to doing slideshows, we just have discussions, so chime in. So yeah, this is an introduction. It's not specifically about ham radio, but I'll promote ham radio quite a bit because of what it gives us. But so the first question, yeah, not supposed to show that. Why do we need other ways of communicating? I mean, we've got cell phones, we've got computer, we got email, we've got internet. Isn't that good enough?
It should be.
I wish. Well, the weather's pretty volatile to cell phones. There's a lot, and they could just turn our cell phones and all that off. I mean,
And they do in disasters and whatnot. They actually throttle the cell phones, and police in a big situation can actually blanket the site so that cell phones don't work.
Can they
And
do
they-
that with ham radio as well?
Well, it'd be a lot harder because there's a lot more frequencies you'd have to blanket. The handhelds, they might be able to, but you know, if you've got the 2 meter 440, you could switch back and forth.
Gotcha.
I have a good friend that's on the sheriff's department and ham operator and neighbor of mine, and they'll blanket the cell phones, but I've never heard of them blanket ham radio because usually the bad guys aren't using ham for that stuff. So why, you know, what are our communication needs? Why would we need more than cell? Why not just depend on that?
well, there's finding each other if something happened, finding your children, finding your parents. Well, my husband and I always worry because he's clear in Alaska, and I always just pray that he'll be home if something happens because he's so far away.
Yeah. So there's a few things that I'm aware of. Cell towers, you know, they rely on the power grid being up. And if the power goes out, they do have battery backups in the last a few hours and generators that may go a day or so, but eventually they're going to go down.
What about the power grid? A power grid, they take a grid out, we're done.
And if they take the grid out, then you're going to need things, you know, to survive that. And, you know, if I go outside again to show the towers and stuff, antennas, I can show you a complete off-grid solar battery setup that will run when the grid goes down. So
Yeah.
we can do that. So the other thing is when there's emergencies and whatnot, the cell system gets completely swamped. I mean, I don't even have a landline anymore. So
Yeah.
most of us got rid of that. And so
Do you think it would be good to have a landline? I've
you
been
know, for
thinking
a long time I thought about it, but it was a big expense, and it's going to go down when the power goes out too, because their generators will last for a while and then stop.
Okay.
Same problem. One thing to be aware of in an emergency, it's better to text than it is to call. The text system that it uses packets a very tiny message and sends it out. It doesn't use up much bandwidth or power. And so you can often get a text through where you'll never get a call to connect. So think of that. The internet, of course, is dependent on, you know, internet lines scattered all over creation. There are, you know, giant server setups, rooms, distribution centers that if they lose their power, they have backup for a while, but again, it goes down. The government has the ability to disrupt the internet and email, so it's just not reliable. So both cell phones and the internet require an infrastructure, lines and power and towers and the ability to communicate. That makes it a problem. So why do we want to communicate? You mentioned your husband's in Alaska. That's a good case. What are some other things that we might want to do if we don't have cell service or internet?
Yeah, like what I mentioned yesterday with just coordinating from town to town here, like, just efforts and emergency relief or whatever, just any basic needs and stuff like that. Since I'm pretty far away from the majority of stuff. So like short, but also long to communicate with family.
Yeah. Kathy's got people far, far away. So I put down a few things. One is power's out, whatnot. Your radio probably may still work, and at least you can pick up local news if it's still somebody's broadcasting. But with the right simple equipment, you have the ability to monitor, BBC in London and hear what's going on nationally, and to listen in on the police and fire and EMS stations and see what's going on locally, to tap into the pilots talking. You can listen in on those and know what's going on. If you're in an evacuation situation, you're leaving in different cars, it'd be nice to have a way to talk between cars to stay in touch, like we used to have to do before we had cell phones. Maybe you need to communicate with family members, like Cameron said, that are maybe even in the same community or a nearby community. I mentioned, I think I've got 6 or 7 married daughters that are scattered around the Wasatch Front that we'd want to connect up with. So that's a different problem than the one of, we got somebody in Alaska we want to talk to. I have a daughter in Logan and a daughter and their families in Wyoming, and that takes a different kind of radio to reach that far. So some of the different needs, and as you think about, we'll cover this again later, what is it that I am preparing for? What is it, who is it I want to communicate with? And that'll determine the kind of equipment and the things you want to prepare for. So first, a little bit on how radios work, actually how all communication work. And that's by transmitting an electromagnetic wave, a wave that goes between positive and negative. It does a cycle. One wavelength is positive past neutral, back to negative, and up to neutral is called a wavelength. And those waves can be very, very long, like in the case of, say, KSL's broadcast, or what we call HF radio. Those waves, it'll travel 300 or 400 feet to make that cycle. Or in the case of a cell phone or the little handhelds we have, it might be meters or centimeters or millimeters that wave travels. And you can see here some of the different kinds of communication based on those waves. AM radio is way up here with big long waves. Amateur radio is actually scattered throughout. Microwave ovens, very tiny short waves. Any wave, if you give it enough power, can be dangerous. So, microwave, we put it in a box, we line it with lead and other things or whatever it is to protect it. And then we give it 500, 800, 1,000 watts, and we can cook with it. So you don't want a leaky microwave around, because you'll be the one getting cooked. Visible light is a wave. Sound is a wave. And all communication happens because something sends a wave and something receives a wave. Jump ahead here. So here's an example. Something transmits, has some kind of an antenna. Light's kind of an exception because the sun shines and it reflects, and those waves bounce off our eyes. Our eyes act as the receiver and they decode what we see. But me talking, I've got a set of vocal cords that are vibrating on a certain frequency, and your ears hear that and interpret that as communication, as some kind of intelligence. And the same with cell phones, virtually everything, ham radio, all the radios, it's all about sending a wave of some size, some type, and there has to be a receiver on the other end to pick that up. We made some spiritual analogies last night. The spirit's like this too. The spirit can be out there transmitting like crazy, and if we're not tuned to the right frequency and not listening, we're not going to hear it. And I've got one of my ham radios here hooked up in the background, you'll hear that there's a lot of noise on the channel. And so, see if I can find a signal. So there's I picked up a signal. There's a lot of noise in our lives, noise in the airwaves. And if the signal isn't strong enough to get above the noise level, you can't hear it. Just like in our lives with the spirit, we have to do things to either reduce the noise level, or the Lord sure got to hammer that signal and to beat us over the head with it. There's things you can do. You can narrow your focus so you're not distracted with some of the things around it. And radios have filters to do that. And you can figure out what's causing the noise. There's usually motors like refrigerators or something that may be causing some of that noise. You can go dampen that out, but it's just like life. So have to have a transmitter and a receiver, and then be in tune on the same frequency. The Federal Communication Commission, the FCC, regulates who can use what frequencies for different things. And this is showing all the different pieces that are chopped up. There's AM radio, there's FM radio, there's TV broadcasts, there's satellite communications, there's business communications, there's military, this is all, there's the remote for your TV, has to be licensed and operate on a certain frequency. Ham radio happens to be this kind of turquoisey green, and it shows up, in different spots scattered throughout because we get privileges in different areas. But the FCC is the one that regulates that. See if I missed anything from the other night. So back on this wave, the way we communicate is we modify the wave in such a way that the receiver can understand it. For example, AM radio, AM stands for amplitude modulation. So the wavelength doesn't change, but they put more power out so that these peaks and valleys are higher or lower. And the radio on the other end knows what to do with that to turn it back into sound. Likewise, FM radio is called frequency modulation. They don't change the height of the wave, they change the wavelength back and forth to encode and send information. And so that's how we send intelligence down the wire. Ham radio is in this high frequency, very high frequency, and ultra high frequency areas. And different radios are used for those different areas. High frequency has the advantage, it's a long wave. When you send it up into the atmosphere, it'll bounce off layers in the atmosphere we'll look at in a second, and go and then come down. KSL's that way. I know people that lived in California, especially when we're in the peak of a sunspot cycle that we're just starting into. In the evening, they can tune into 1160 on their AM radio and they can hear KSL, and it'll fade out in the day, but it's one of those long waves that's skipping. These very high frequencies, which are shorter waves, they don't bounce. They tend to, go up into the atmosphere and disappear or run into a mountain. They don't, so they're line of sight. And that'll play in here different. So I've talked here a little bit about frequency is how fast the signal changes between positive and negative. The cell phones, the handy talkies, the handheld ham radios, FM radio, most TV signals all operate in this, what we call short range or line of sight. HF ham radio, AM broadcast, they're all in a frequency that's longer. I covered that pretty much. Here's a picture. There's 6 or 7 bands in the atmosphere. And when the sun is shining and we have sunspots going on, the sun ionizes those bands and they become like, think of them like a shell around the earth. more ionized they get, the more the waves will bounce off of it instead of going into space. And so here's an example of this yellow one. If the layer that's ionized, because it's in the middle of the day, is lower, then you're going to bounce and not go very far. But like this red one here that goes way out here at nighttime, when those lower layers are de-energized and it's higher layers that it bounces off of, you can go quite a ways. You know, I've talked halfway around the world on many occasions, so in the right conditions. So there's things you can do. But that's some of the things that ham radio gives us, is that ability to use that skip property. So we use different devices for different situations. We've all seen, you know, the little walkabout radios I showed last night. You know, grab one of the 72-hour kits that's out of the closet. And in it, you know, 15 years old, I'm sure, but still good. I have the old, this was a Midland Extra Talk. It has like 13 or 14 channels on it. Doesn't take a license. Before the age of cell phone, you'd take these to Disneyland to talk to each other, or you'd put them in the car so that you could talk while you're driving. You go to Lake Powell and somebody would go out on the boat and somebody would stay back at the houseboat. Well, you'd keep these so you could talk to each other. And they're effective for that. They're fairly inexpensive. You can usually get a kit with 4 or more in it, and then divvy it up. And it's good for that. The disadvantage is legally, the power rating on this, the maximum power out is 1/2 watt. Whereas when you jump to a ham radio handheld, let me find one. You're out of my emergency kit. You look and it looks about the same thing. The difference is this one can go up to 8 watts, and the regular ham radio handhelds are often 50 watts and can go up to 1,500 watts with the right kind of equipment. So you get more range out of it. On top of that, we'll talk about these little Baofeng radios. The beauty is they don't only cover the very same frequencies that are found on these little handhelds. They have that. It's called the family radio system, the FRS system. They cover GMRS. They cover all the ham frequencies, and you can transmit and receive on all of those. Plus, they allow you to listen in on the aviation frequencies. You can listen in on some of the police and fire to a limited extent, as well as, you know, the weather. The National Weather Service broadcasts are on here. So it's a step up and does a lot more. But it's still limited the line of sight, with the exception of ham radio. They'll put towers on mountains, and you'll transmit up to the tower on one frequency and then listen back on another. And so the tower will repeat. We call them repeaters. So it repeats the signal and sends it out over a broader range. And in some cases, that's, for example, in my case in Utah Valley, this radio would not reach over the mountain because the mountain's in the way. But there's a repeater up on the mountain that I know of. And so I've instructions for my kids that have these kits to use the repeater to reach the kids that are in Salt Lake. So downside is repeaters rely on power too. So you might be back to line of sight, but that's different equipment. So these are good. You can get a mobile rig that's the same line of sight to put in cars. You can get simple antennas. Where's my simple antenna? Just the little rubber duck that comes with it. There it is. You know, it just has this simple one, or you can upgrade and get one that's a little longer and bigger, and it'll go further and do better. And then if you look at the ceiling of my office up there is actually a directional antenna that I have pointed where most of my kids live, and I can screw that in where the antenna goes. And as a result, I can reach them easier than just with the antenna that screws on top. So let's see.
So a question on like the walkie-talkies and stuff like that, like the Midland ones that you were talking about.
Yep.
So if you like with those, can you hear from a further distance? Like if the transmitter has a higher wattage, can those littler ones that don't have as much wattage still pick up on it? Or do you need like equivalent?
No, they should, because the Baofeng can transmit on the same frequency as these. They could talk to each other potentially. It could hear the Baofeng at 8 watts could talk to it a lot further away. They'd hear it, but at a 0.5 watt, the Baofeng probably wouldn't hear it when they answered.
Gotcha.
So yeah, you'd.
So the wattage is important on how much it can transmit most.
How much power it puts out, how far it'll push that signal.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and a directional antenna makes a difference, because what happens with an antenna like this, it radiates power equally around the antenna. So its 0.5 watt is spread across 360 degrees, whereas the one up on my roof, you get like 90% of the power is going in the direction that array's pointed. So you get an effective increase in power because of the directional, but that's another lesson. So
yeah.
So the question is, where do we start? All these choices, I'll show you some other radios when we get going too, but what do I need? So the step one is to decide, what are your needs? Who are you trying to talk to? You just trying to listen? Do you have family to talk to? Is it just your need for the family? All the kids are at home, and so your need is just short range because you're going to be moving together. Or is it like my case where my family's grown and they're all out and I need to talk to all over the place in order to make sure they're safe? So one is figure out what your needs are. The second is to make a communication plan. We'll talk about that. And then third is to select the equipment and build your kits. And there's some examples of kits here that we're going to cover. And then fourth is to share your plan and practice with those that you're trying to communicate with. So in my case, because I knew that I wasn't going to get them all to get ham radio licenses, nor do some have an interest, I built these emergency communication kits. It's got a solar panel in it. It's got a battery with a solar charger and ways to plug things in and recharge. It's got the radio. It has a set of instructions that walk them through step by step. And I built kits for all of my married kids and gave them to them. It wasn't Christmas, but was for a father's get together that we did. And then I've offered incentives, any one of the adults that'll go get their ham radio license, I said I'd give them $500. So
Wow.
it was motivating to some. I've got 2 or 3 working on it. And then I told all the grandkids that if they get their license, I'd give them $250. So I have an 8-year-old granddaughter, one of them that's working on it, along with her older brother, and some others that are working on their licenses. We'll see. I don't think I'm going to go broke, but if I get a few license outs, I'll be ahead of the game.
Oh, that's cool.
So again, step one is, what are our needs? Talking among ourselves, family in the same neighborhood, long distance, or do I just want to be able to monitor and hear what's going on? Those are different needs, and we'll talk about each one. So,
Hey, Neal, if you are listening in with the police scanner, but you can't communicate with them, right?
right, you're just listening.
Okay. And you can get that on the second one that you showed?
So we're going to talk about that in just a second. I'll tell you what the limitation is. So,
okay.
So a good plan should address who it is you're communicating with. It should have contact lists of both local and out of the area, of all the people you want to talk to. It needs to address how you're going to communicate, and it ought to be multi-layered, meaning more than one way. My plan says, first thing is you try the cell network, you send text to everybody, you try to call, send an email. If that doesn't work, then you fall back and we start working on the ham radio side. And it should address when you're going to communicate, because it doesn't do any good to have this radio and turn it on and start trying to talk, even if they know the right frequency, if nobody's listening. So you'll see my plan has like 8 in the morning and 9 in the evening for 10 minutes, or right after the hour, and says start trying on this frequency. If you don't get anybody, switch to this frequency, and if you don't get anything, then go ahead and shut it off and wait for the next cycle, so you don't run your batteries down and whatnot. This presentation is posted out there, and this link takes you to a website that can help you build a plan, and you can go through that. Okay. When it comes to two-way communication, being able to talk and receive, again, there's a bunch of different services and licensing. First is that family radio service. That's the little handy talkie. There's 14 channels, 1/2 watt of power. There's no license needed. You can have that and send it all over. There's also the general mobile radio service, is something new that's added, and there's 15 channels, and you're allowed 2 to 5 watts. There is technically a license. I don't think anybody's checking, and the license is actually good for a whole family. And so some of us stretch that a little bit. My family's my kids and grandkids. So I did get a license, but I don't think it matters. And I referenced it in the thing, but nobody's checking. That's one I'd say you almost don't need it. Then there's a multi-use radio service, it's got 5 channels. I don't know anybody that really uses it, but it's available, and it's covered by the Baofeng anyway. And then
what is number 2? How far will number 2 go?
Number 2 to 5 watts. It's line of sight still.
Okay.
So, like some of my kids, if I try to talk on the radio in the house, the signal's interrupted by the walls. But if I go out on the back deck and talk, they hear me out in Cedar Hills.
Okay.
And it'd be similar. So those are, yeah. I think when you get all said and done, you're going to find that having this Baofeng, it's only $100. It's a little more than some of the others, but there's so much more you can do with it that it's like, if I were buying today, this is everything I'd get, but we'll get there. So ham radio, on the other hand, thousands and thousands of channels, up to 1,500 watts. The handhelds are mostly 10 to 50. There is a license required. Technically, no license is required when there's an emergency, but emergencies aren't intended to last for days and weeks. They define an emergency as something that's short in duration. So, you got in a car wreck or you were stranded out in the mountains, you could, without a license, you could get on and nobody would squawk. But if you're talking over days and weeks, they might. So that's why we encourage you to get a license. And we'll talk about how to do that and what's entitled. And then, of course, the Baofeng technically doesn't meet FCC specs because it does combinations of all of these, and they're not supposed to mix and match, but they haven't shut it down in years. So while it's there, we're making good use of it. So for long distance, again, amateur radio like this radio here behind me, on the HF bands, either with simple antennas or maybe I ought to go outside because it's starting to get dark. With more permanent antennas, you can really go a long ways. So let's see. Anything I want to cover before we'll go outside and show you some of the antennas for the big radios. So I'm going to mute because I got to go onto my cell phone to walk outside. I'll start on my cell phone in just a second and show you the solar system and the antennas outside. So hang on one second.
So Kathy, how far away are like your kids? Where are they spread out to?
Which
Uh,
Kathy you talking to?
Are you talking to me?
Well, I was talking to Kathy Barton, but Kathy, anybody who wants it.
I have most of my kids here. I have one son in Evanston, but the rest are all down here. And I actually have some, but I don't even know when they are. But I bet that they're the second one. They're not walkie-talkies, so I think it's the second one.
It looks like the Baofeng, yeah.
I don't even know how to use them though. Yeah,
That's a problem.
yeah, that's what they say is Bofang or whatever you just said.
Yeah, I've got simple instructions for mine that I can share with you. So here's the
Okay.
garage. Here's the Solarc, the EMP-proof solar system, complete
Wow.
with a big battery backup. So it runs the house. We are still connected to the grid, but we don't use the grid much. In
So-
addition,
So hold
there's
on, that was this, or was that just your electrical system?
that's electrical backup
Oh.
power. We'll get to ham radio in a second.
All right,
There's
gotcha.
also a propane fired whole house generator. I've got a tank of propane down here that we keep full
Yeah,
that backs that up. So just coming up on the back deck here so we can see these antennas. So did get my garden started, got onions and carrots and
woohoo!
potatoes in, chickens and
Nice.
rabbits out there. I put in a well house, so we've got our own water. But this
Nice.
antenna here is called a vertical. And you can see, it's permanently mounted in the ground. It's not portable, so it's not part of my kit, but it's part of my base station. And then we have these portable antennas. Let's see if I can get up closer. So here you see, you got the wire coming up to a box, and then this long wire goes way out there to a flagpole on the other end of the property. That's a very portable antenna because you can take that down and roll it up, stick it in a kit, and set it up anywhere. And that's what's in the kits, and I'll show you those kits in a second. So, any questions on what's outside?
For your ham radio though, right?
That's for a permanent base station kind of setup
mhm.
versus, an emergency one that you're gonna take with you.
Okay.
So the solar that you've got there in the garage that you're walking into, that powers your whole house, or?
It does, and the
Okay.
garage and everything else.
Mhm.
It's kind of fun to look at the screen and
Yeah.
Are they solar panels on top of your house?
on top of the house and on top of the garage.
Mhm. Gotcha.
So you see that it shows that you're pulling from the batteries and powering your lights.
So you're already using that. You're not really on the grid at all?
We're connected and it uses a little bit and it back feeds the grid. But like right now, if you look, that's the grid and it's not pulling or pushing to the grid at all. It's just pulling from the batteries.
Do they pay to use it?
Do they? So yeah, Utah Power is kind of funky. It's like most, I think. They charge you 10 to 12 cents to use the grid. And then they only pay you 5 cents for what you put back. So, so we try not to push or pull because we don't mind pushing, but we try not to pull. Okay,
Yeah.
I'm going to drop off my phone here.
Okay.
Okay.
There you are.
Side, let me share screen again. And okay. So you wouldn't set up, a base station like I have going here. It'd be a portable, unless you get into ham radio and decide that would be interesting. But
Shady,
you would do.
get over here.
She said we'd hear some sometimes.
Yeah. What are you chasing, Kath?
So this is a portable HF system. There's similar to that antenna outside is, this is the equivalent that fits in the can.
Mhm.
We also talked about these cans are EMP proof.
Oh, okay, good.
I also went, you know, you need to practice. So I had the opportunity to go to Honduras with a medical team
Yeah.
and actually be the communication, the radio guy. So this kit's got my radio, battery, devices to hook to a computer so we can send and receive email over the radio, antennas, cables, all of that. And this was our sole source. You go out in these remote villages and travel for, you know, most of a day to get there, and there's no, the power is the generator you brought with you. And cell service is, you know, a thing that almost non-existent. But it was good to go practice and see that I could actually do it.
Mhm.
Did you have any little issues or did it go pretty smooth?
It went smooth. They've done it for many years, and so they know what to prepare for. So the next question is
Come here, baby. Good girl.
we figure out what it is we want to do. We got to build our kit. And as I mentioned, my 72-hour kits do have these simple handy talkies because they've been in there forever. But every family has a kit with the Baofeng in it. And then the families that are further away have a bigger kit that has HF gear and those long antennas wires in it. Where did I skip over? Where's my selecting equipment? I did. How did we skip here? We skipped this one somehow. So if you're just looking to listen, if you want to listen to the police and the fire and the EMS, in today's world, you need what's called a trunking scanner. In the old days, the police would have a frequency and the fire department would have a frequency and the water guys would have a frequency, and only one person at a time in that group could talk and the rest had to listen. But what they did is they got smarter, and so the fire would get 10 or 12 frequencies. And then the radio is smart enough to listen and figure out which frequency is available and use that to send and then listen. And so it can jump around. They call it a trunk of frequencies or a bundle of frequencies. And so you need a scanner that's capable of following that. So you can tune into one of the frequencies and listen and maybe switch between them and catch most of a good conversation. But a trunking scanner is what's needed if you really want to follow the full thing. Aircraft, on the other hand, they're fixed. They don't jump around. You can listen in on them with whatever. And then shortwave is like ham radio. It's a radio that will listen on ham frequencies and others over a wide scale. And where's mine?
What's it called?
It's a shortwave radio that can do single sideband. And the one that I recommend is this, it's this GP7 that's listed there. Mine happens to be a GP5. But it'll listen in, you can get the BBC in London. It'll listen in on all the ham frequencies. It'll do all the aircraft frequencies. It'll do the around the world stuff. In addition to the local, but it's just to listen. So
Do
that
most news stations in the States do a ham signal?
most new stations say what?
Yeah, in the United States, do most news stations have like a ham, like you're saying BBC or whatever, but like
Okay.
like stateside, is there many?
So when I say BBC of London, they happen to be near a ham band. They're not actually on the ham band, but they're in that HF, high frequency, medium frequency, those long waves that bounce around.
Gotcha.
So, and the same thing with this desktop unit, I can listen way above or below what the ham frequencies are. I just can't transmit when I'm there.
Mhm.
So I can listen to KSL on this. I can tune into BBC on this one, but it's a, you know, $1,500 radio, and this is 130. So
Yeah.
if you're just listening, this is a handy one to have. And I did check it with nickel cadmium batteries, it has a USB plug to charge it. And so with the battery set I've got, you can recharge it and power it that way. So yeah.
So just so I understand, so the shortwave radio, the SSB, that one is just to listen in.
Listen only.
Okay.
Yeah, everything on your screen is listen only.
Okay.
This yellow one, you know, it can be found on Amazon. I don't have any experience with it. It's supposed to be, you know, have a hand crank for recharging and a little solar panel to recharge. I haven't had one to mess with it. I'm not 100% sold. If you go to some of the emergency preparedness sites, they may have something that they've tested and worked with as well, but it's an example. Okay. Jump that one. So here's an example of what's in my kit that I give all my kids. First of all, it's this, what we call a Fat 50 ammo can. And then what I've done is the rubber seal that was in here has been taken out. And to make this EMP proof, you grind the paint off of this top edge. You don't have to do it on the sides, just right this top edge where the seal hits. And then when you take the rubber seal out, you have to use like a little Dremel or something to also grind the paint off around here and then insert these electromagnetic seals. By doing that, it creates a solid box where no electronic signals can sneak in because it's a solid thing. And that's extra protection. And then in the case, we've talked about the Baofeng radio. We've got the longer antenna. I've got some solar panels. It's just barely fits in the can, but it's a 60-watt solar panel that folds up. It's used to recharge that battery.
How long does it take to recharge that battery ish?
It takes 3, 4, 5 hours if the battery's low. So, but it does do it. Then let's see what's next. Then we've got dump this battery out. So this battery has this thing on top of it. It's called the Batpack Solar. It's some guys made it. Got a little indicator of their voltage. This particular input happens to be into a solar charge controller. So that's why it'll properly charge and not ruin your battery. And then in addition, it has 2 of these pigtails that are we call Anderson power pole, and everything is keyed to that. So with those, I can then connect here to recharge Baofeng. I can connect here to run other things. I can, I've got a little LED light that plugs in. There's a bunch of things there that go with it. So these bags were really handy. The company that they don't make them anymore and they're out of stock, not essential, but can't find them anymore. So let's see. Yeah, so we've got the USB to the 10 volt. That's the adapter that plugs in. So it has a cord that plugs in here for the Baofeng charger, so you can charge it right off the battery. Has a USB guy that plugs into the battery, so you can plug in your USB things, charge your phones, those kind of things. A bunch of extension cables, the battery, of course, and then these EMP seals are not inexpensive, but if you're worried about having your equipment ruined because of a nuclear EMP or something, they're fairly expensive to have that peace of mind. So that's that. The other thing I mentioned the other night, when you're storing non-rechargeable batteries, if you'll get these Energizer lithium, the ultimate lithium, they have a 20-year storage life. Unlike the lead acid batteries, they're not going to leak and, you know, get gunk all over. They have a wide temperature range, although you shouldn't freeze them. They only come in AAA and AA, but all of my devices, all of my, you know, flashlights, everything, this is what I put in them. I take the other AA's out and we use them up around the house
Mhm.
and put these with extras in them. So those are the kind of batteries you want. I also do this right in the rain. These notebooks, the paper is actually, you know, tear proof and waterproof. And so with the pencil that comes with it, where's my pencil? Here, you can take notes and write down, you know, what people tell you, and this can get wet and it doesn't get ruined. So I include that in my kit.
Mhm.
And then if we jump to the big kit, it's okay. It's essentially the same, except for the can is bigger and you're using an HF radio that's a little more expensive, a lot more expensive, and different antennas, but otherwise you still have the battery and the connectors and a lot of the same things. So I mentioned, if you have a plan and you don't share it, you know, it's no plan at all. So make sure that if you have a plan, you share it. You encourage your family members to get radios, or you're the kind person that gives them a radio. Maybe you don't go all out like this. Maybe just give them the radio and the instructions and ask them to keep it charged, you know. But figure out what you're going to do and then do that. I've even got, you know, my next younger brother, who has 6 kids, has been getting more and more prepared, and he came over the other day and we built 8 kits for him and his family. So he's doing the same thing. And then you need to, you know, do some practice. So now we want to talk about, why do I want a ham radio license? And number one is communication is a skill. You need to learn and practice it. And ham radio is designed to do that. Getting your license and then, you know, talking and working with others. There's actually ham radio nets for genealogy. There's ham radio nets for preparedness. There's ham radio for just about everything under the sun. There's ham radio nets that are all women that do crafting and other things. And so you can find a group that will let you practice your skills. Ham radios don't require an infrastructure. You don't have to have towers. You don't need your power to be up if you've got things set up right. And it's portable. You know, that can isn't very big. And if you had to take it and go with you, it'd be pretty easy to go and set up. You know, I went to Honduras, flew on a plane, and then traveled and then set that up. And for 2 weeks, that was our sole communication. And it'll work when everything else doesn't. So that's a good thing. So how do you get a license? Well, one is there's 3 license levels. Technician is the beginning level. Technician gives you the right to talk on the handheld, the local frequencies, with limited privileges on some of the higher, primarily for Morse code, which is not required to get your license. It used to be, but is not today. So with a technician, you're legal to talk on the handheld and participate locally. If you get your general or extra, general gives you about 60% of the privileges. I have a chart here, and it shows, you can see how some of those bars are, you know, the top one's like extra class and the bottom ones are general.
Yeah.
So you can see you get most, if you get your general, you have most of the privileges in the ham frequencies. And that's my encouragement, is to go to that level so you have the ability to talk long distance. The higher the license, the more frequencies and privileges. A license is good for 10 years and can be renewed without testing. So you just renew it every 10 years and it stays good. It's inexpensive. It's under $40. The The technician license is 35 questions from a pool of 423. The general is another 35 questions from a pool of 454. Need a 74% rate to pass. The questions are published, they're public. So I'll give you some apps and things that will actually let you, you can practice and do those things.
Hey, Neil, is there a way to find ham radio operators near you?
There's clubs, and there's look up the American Radio Relay League, the ARRL.org is the international organization that does all the testing and licensing and represents us. If you go to their website, there are links that you can find a club, search on Find a Ham Radio Club, and it will bring up things in your neighborhood. There's way more in Utah, Salt Lake Valley. There's dozens and dozens that I know of. St. George can be the same way.
Yeah, I know there's a lot here. I just wonder.
We have some LDS clubs that before COVID would meet once a month, and somebody would teach a topic and you'd practice together. And
how much do you think it would cost just to put a small ham radio kit together, like a good one?
So if you go back to this particular kit with the solar panels and whatnot is about $600.
Oh, okay.
That's like line of sight, isn't it? Or
Yeah, that's all the handheld. And the bigger kit is 12 to 14 or 1500, mostly because these radios, instead of $100, you're talking 500 to 600 something dollars for the main unit. So, and if you get involved in the clubs, get your license. People have used equipment. Sometimes they'll give it away or they'll sell it for cheap. So you can get in and get started for less. When you go to take the test, you pay a fee and you can take as many tests as you want for that fee. Now, most of us aren't quite brave enough to try to take all three, but I did take 2 of them at once. So once I found out, I originally got my technician license. You used to have an amateur, a technician, and then there were 3 others above that. Before cell phones, I had a bunch of varsity scouts, and we were always hiking on mountains and faraway places in the Uintas where you didn't have communication. And so me and a bunch of the varsity scouts we went through the classes and learned Morse code and got our license. And then I would carry a radio with us everywhere we went. And that kind of faded when cell phones got to be a thing. And the Morse code part of it was always the hard part, and you had to learn more and more words per minute as you went up the chain. So I never went further than technician originally. Then I found out they dropped that requirement and went back and just blasted through the last of the licenses. So here's some study helps. The ham radio exam tech app, it's free, iPhone app, hamstudy.org apps, $4. Both of them are real good. On YouTube, this first one's a 1-hour kind of an overview of ham radio, kind of a dive in, drink from the fire hose, show me everything. But what I recommend is the second one. Dave Kessler has been endorsed by the ARRL. He's an older guy. He speaks slowly. He explains things well. He has a channel on all kinds of ham radio things, but he's got a 5.5 hour. It's broken up in about half-hour increments. And this is the link to the first one. And
you have it spelled different. Is it spelled different? The Dave Kessler, and then you have Dave Kessler, the technician. Is it supposed to be like that?
It's probably supposed to be with a K.
Okay, I was just wondering which one was.
Is YouTube going to play okay?
it should.
We'll find out. You get a feel for what he's.
Hello, I'm Dave Kessler, amateur radio call sign KE0OG, your guide through the ARRL license manuals. The videos in this course follow the manuals section for section. You can get the ARRL license manuals from the source listed below the video.
Anyway, you get the idea. He's very easy to listen to. He does a good job explaining. My daughter has put together, let's jump over here, right here. Yeah, it's spelled with a K. I've been misspelling it.
I think he has it with a C. It was on a C.
Okay, maybe I'm wrong. So one of my daughters that's got, 2 kids going through it had found this and put it together. This is kind of the checklist of the, the short. Chapter 1 is 20 minutes, 10-minute video, 9-minute video, and the reading that goes to the book. And it's outlined, and that's uploaded there in the same area, so you can get that. The current license, the manual you want to have is called the 4th edition. The only problem is they change the questions every 3 or 4 years, and the questions are going to change on July 1. So they should come out with the 5th edition here shortly, and it'll be good for 3 or 4 years. And unless you're going to speed and get your license between now and July 1, you'll want the new manual.
How long is the test?
It is, we go back, it's 35 questions right here.
It's
35
basically memorizing the answer, right?
Yeah, 35 questions from a pool of 423. So it's pretty quick. Let's see. And then my recommendation on how you study, you have 2 choices. Some people are really good at just, memorizing questions. Some of us have to kind of get our head around the concepts and then it works. So one method is you actually read the book. That's my suggestion. You actually read through the book. You take the practice questions for that section. And if it just comes naturally, just skip on to the next one. If you hit a section that's harder, then you might read through it or watch Dave Kessler's stuff more frequently. And then go through the questions until you can get, 75% passing rate. Other people, I've got a son-in-law that is really good at, where'd we go? Okay. Really good at memorizing. He didn't even bother. He did the modified. He went into the questions for the first section, logically was able to answer it, didn't even bother to study. Second section, hit a section where he didn't know. So he memorized those questions and then moved on. Almost didn't even learn the material. But I have to study a little bit and then see if I can answer the questions. If I can, I just move on to the next one. So listen to the YouTubes, read the book, and then do the study questions, and you can do those questions over and over until you're passing at a regular rate. And then those tests are held. I know there's a place in downtown Salt Lake, and then BYU's got a place, and I'm sure St. George has one, and
They do.
Idaho, they're probably dearth. There's nobody up there. You'll have to travel.
Yeah.
There's probably a place, and with COVID, they've actually had some online, ability to take it without coming in person. So I don't know if that's still a thing or not.
Huh.
But that's what I would encourage, is to try to get to your general, first for the knowledge, and second, so you have the license so you can use that longer range radio. But that's kind of what I had put together. Questions that I can answer?
So the ones that you were texting me about, those cans,
Yeah.
Those are for like those will fit the more local line of sight.
Yeah, the Fat 50, this size, is the one that fits the local kit.
Mm-hmm.
And then the 20 millimeter is for the bigger one.
20 millimeter, you said?
It takes a little bigger. Yeah. And it's listed there with a link in the kit. So is there anything in those kits that I didn't go over? Let's see.
Did you say you have information for me for mine, for the dolphin?
What's that?
Did you say you have some information for mine so I know like what channel to use or whatever?
If we get together, so these radios with a cable and a little program, once you get one programmed, you can clone the programming and
Oh,
another one. These have all been cloned and programmed for, well, you'll see in here, except for a couple of local repeaters, it's pretty generic. So we could, if you bring your radio up to education week or something, we could zap it.
Oh, that'd be cool. That'd be
So
way cool.
here, I'm just going to go through, here's an example of my plan, and you'll see how it's helpful. So first is when there's an emergency, what do? You know, you make sure you're safe and the key things are taken care of. Then you gather. There's 3 places we gather, and then you look at the communication plan. So first is you call or text by phone. If the phone systems are down, then you can try email if the internet's up. And I provide a primary contact and out-of-state backup. And they're to try to call, text, or email those contacts first. If they can't get there, then we try to communicate locally. And I list some channels here. And we'll get to where it gives the times here in this. Well, right here's the time. So we say channel 25 happens to be a local simplex frequency from 8 to 8:05 in the AM and PM. Try calling. And that's when everybody should be on looking. If you don't get anybody there, then switch to channel 26 on the 440 and again, call for 5 minutes and see if you can get through. If that doesn't work, then switch if the repeater's up and there's a channel for the 2 channels for the repeaters, they try that. If that doesn't work, then you shut down and wait for the night, you know, the next cycle. If you're out of area here, it tells you, you know, get on the 40 meter band at this 7.295 and at 9 in the morning and 9 in the evening, try to call. Some comments there. Here it gives instructions on, you know, those channels are programmed in, so you just punch it until channel 27 shows up. You don't even have to figure out how to tune it. But if you needed to tune to another band, you know, specifically, this gives very specific instructions on what to press, how to press, which mode to be in, how to, you know, walks through step by step to set each thing. And then, you know, here's the settings you want to set if you had to reset the whole thing. In addition, for repeaters, a little more complicated, and it walks through how to set that up for a repeater. Then how do you charge your batteries? And it goes through step by step and tells you which cable to hook to which thing and, you know, how to make sure it's all taken care of. There's also how to charge your radio from, so that was for the solar panels to charge the batteries. And here's how to charge your radio from the batteries. Step by step, the cables all have labels on them, really simple. Then I list, here's other frequencies that you can listen to. You know, here's National Guard and emergencies. This is a government interagency, the Red Cross, happens to be programmed as a channel disaster relief, so on and so forth. You see that different channels that are built into it. Also, we have, this is the family radio service channels. They're programmed, I've got them programmed in as 1 through 22. So you don't have to do it. But if something were to happen, you'd know exactly what frequency to put in. Here's a copy of that checklist that's in there. It doesn't have the prices on it, but it gives you some more detail. Oh, there's the one with the prices. So here it is. And how to talk on the long range one. Anyway, so all those channels are pre-programmed if I upload that program to your radio. Then you can add to it if you want, whatnot, but that makes it a little easier because instead of trying to figure out National Weather Service is this the night, how do I key it in? Oh, channel 25, click, 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 it's there. So that's uploaded out to the Learning Zion site too. I believe.
Did you put all this on the Learning Zion site, did you say?
Yes.
Awesome.
So the presentation, the example plan, a couple of notes from someone else who's done this presentation, and that licensing, that checklist for the licensing is out there.
That's so helpful.
So,
Yeah, so when you go into Learning Zion, if you'll click on the discussion forums and then go to communications, it's all listed in there.
That's so great.
Even like these 2 videos, last nights and tonight's, the recordings of those, you can go and watch them again.
They're all out there, so. Okay. Education week, or you're coming up, just holler and we can easily program your radio. I did order, you're getting expensive. They're it'd be like $29 for these cans, and then it's another 28 for this electromagnetic seals. But I did order a bunch, and I'll get a bunch of them ready if anybody wants them. So
Mhm.
Where do you live at, Neil?
I'm in Highland, Utah. So
Oh.
I'm
Okay.
like 15 minutes from BYU, and just before you go around the point of the mountain.
I'm up in the Roy Ogden area.
Yeah. Okay. So not far.
Oh,
So they're just regular ammo cans that you're using?
Well, you'll see in the instruction, this is called the Fat 50. It's ammo cans come in like 24 varieties, and the standard 50 cal is a narrow one, and you can't fit the solar panels and the radio and everything in the narrow one. You need the wider Fat 50 one. So
Have you
but there's
checked Smith and Edwards for them?
we checked a couple of sites and they were out. I didn't call Smith and Edwards specifically. They sometimes have them.
Yeah.
So I just had like a question, just kind of looking at what my goals are and things, just kind of bouncing around some ideas. But so if I am, like, you've been to Malta, like this little valley here,
Yep.
we've probably got like where I'm in the center, there's 30 miles to the south, 30 miles to the north here of like line of sight. So if I'm kind of like, for example, since nobody else here really does a whole lot of ham radio stuff in an emergency situation, if we're trying to coordinate on a regular basis and like tune in at a certain time kind of a thing, if we were trying to set up a base station here in the center of town, and then everybody else have ways to listen in, not necessarily to talk back to it, but we would just like establish a base station, right? And then have like basically like walkie-talkies, I think would handle it. Or would we need like Baofengs to be able to get up to those distances of like 30 feet or 30 miles, sorry.
I'm just gonna look here and see what repeaters you've got in that neighborhood. So those handy talkies are probably not gonna go 30 miles. They're like a mile or two.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
They'd be fine for close by, but you're probably gonna want a repeater there that you can get up to. That's okay. How can I look up? Search on.
Like when I was looking on Amazon, yeah, I'm totally new to all of that kind of thing, but there's like a 6-pack of Midland two-way radios, and it says up to a 30-mile range.
If you're standing on top of the mountain and the rest of them are 30 miles away down below, maybe.
Okay, gotcha. That's what it's talking about. It's way exaggerating, perfect ideal circumstances. Okay.
Even with the 8 watts of this and a good antenna, it's a bit of a stretch for me to get over to Cedar Hills across the lake.
Okay.
And that's only 10 miles or so. So okay, how do I'm trying to remember how to look up. I should be able to look up Malta, Idaho, but I am not. It's keyed on my location. You have to go out on the internet. There's a way to. Oops. Where we're reasonably certain you're not packing up and moving, that you're going to be one of the places people come to, I would be real tempted to put just a mast up with a directional beam, like, something bigger than what's on my ceiling, and point it at the cities that you want to talk to. Or even a bigger, just a vertical antenna that's up higher will reach further.
Gotcha.
Cameron,
If
there
you
used to be a ham radio site up on Mount Harrison.
Okay.
Clear up above what? What's that lake? Lake Cleveland? No.
Mhm.
But it was
Independence.
up above there, so.
So like, I'm guessing that would be kind of like a repeater station or whatever. So like on one of the tallest mountains here.
And that would let you talk to the other neighborhoods.
Okay. So we just need to broadcast up to it and then over to them. That was my next question. So we coordinate our efforts here in the valley, but how do we coordinate across the two different mountains here that to those? So if there's a repeater up on that mountain,
And there's
that
power. Yeah,
yeah, and there's power, we'd be able to do that.
you'd be able to do that. And then if that goes down, then you'd want an HF setup doing what we with, like I talked last, if you put that long wire closer to the ground, then the signal tends to go up and come down. Instead of bouncing far away around the earth, it'll bounce in an umbrella that's 50 or 100 miles around. That's what I have to do to actually get to Logan or Wyoming, because that long bounce wants to skip those guys and go way far away.
Oh, uh-huh.
Okay, so tell me what you have to do to Logan, because my daughter lives in Hiram, and that's who I would, the one that's not as close, that I would have to be in contact with.
So you're in, you say up in,
I live out west. You've heard of Hooper, that at West Haven. That's where I'm in West Haven.
okay. So you got to get over the mountain to get to them.
Right.
They're actually repeaters, but you couldn't, you wouldn't be able to count on that. You'd use the HF set and string that long wire antenna 15 or 20 feet above the ground and point it in the direction towards Logan. So when you string it so that it points towards them. That's the direction that tends to work best. And then it would bounce the signal up and down to them.
So which one was the HF set then?
Okay, let's go back here.
Yeah, so there's the two different sizes. There's the one that's the line of sight, and then he has the HF.
So that's the
That's
ball one, or whatever you called it.
It's the 20. Yeah, it's got 20 or 30 mil, either one of those ammo cans, and it's got the bigger radios.
Okay,
So
gotcha.
get into the presentation. You can print that page out, or the example communication plan has this in it as well. So you could print it out from that Word doc or that Google Doc.
So, where I'm at, I'm on 6.5 acres of ground, so I've got room around me and a big barn. So would that be best to put it like on top of that barn, the antenna?
Yeah, you do something like that, get up 15, 20 feet off the ground and attach one end of that, and then figure out what's, depending on which antenna, these are, I think, 75 feet long. So something that's 75 feet away, you'd string it out and then hook it to that, and then hook it to your radio and be able to communicate.
This is a random question, but say everything's down. We do have like a cell phone tower. Well, I don't even know if it's a cell phone tower, but anyway, we have a couple pretty tall towers right here in the center of town. I'm not sure what they're actually used for, but in an emergency situation, if we could find enough solar to have it as that, we could like run a repeater and stuff up there, right?
You could, and it's different hardware, but
Mm-hmm.
most of these repeaters are operated by amateurs, for free.
Mm-hmm.
So they go out and buy the equipment and set it up and operate it. And
Okay, so I have a question. So if I got that HF one, she wouldn't need to have that at her place also, would she, or would she?
she would.
She
Yeah,
would? Okay.
both sides need the same thing.
In order to talk, but if she just wanted to listen on the other side, does she need to?
So no, she could have that GP7, that simple one, but you don't know if you're talking to her, and you can't find out
Exactly.
whether she's
Yeah.
okay. So
Yeah, she's got a bunch of kids. I want to know they're okay.
Yeah.
yep. Oh, hey, Malta. All right, I see. Yeah, repeaters up on a peak to your west.
Yeah, that'd be the one my dad was talking about.
There's two of them. So Burley, Mount Harrison, yep. And another one. So there's two of them up there.
Okay.
Well, could be one on this.
That would take you clear
That's
into
what he's
Burley,
saying.
Twin Falls. I'm sure that's gonna reach clear out to Jerome, Twin Falls, whatnot.
Sweet. I just got to learn how to use it.
Cameron, there's one up there by Twin Peaks, just this mountain right here, Cottrell.
Uh-huh.
There's that. There's a repeater.
But is it a
up there.
ham radio as well?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, I think.
Oh, Terry said it, he thought it was, but we know the one on Mount Harrison is.
For
the
sure.
ham.
Wait, yeah, I'll have to just kind of look into that. Oh, and you're looking up the website, aren't you there?
Yeah. I'm trying to find, how did I did a search, North American repeaters. There is a proximity. There's a
Yeah,
Google.
that helps a lot. So you can like kind of see where we're working with. And I'm sure once I get into it and look at local clubs here, you know, they'll be able to show me all the ins and outs as what we've got specifically.
They do. And Malta doesn't exist. Anyway,
But yeah, I'll look into that. That's great.
I did find it, Idaho repeaters. Yeah, so I did find it on my other computer. I'm trying to bring it up here, but it shows two of them and it shows the frequencies. And with that, with those instructions of mine, you could program the offset and see how it works.
Mhm.
I want to search by location. Anyway. Yeah, so where you're out in the sticks, you might want to put something up on a tower. You'd still take your handheld when you're driving around or whatnot, but that'd give you a range to get over the mountain or to hit the repeaters. And
Mhm. So for the most part, I'm looking at it wanting, if I'm going to start investing, you know, low scale, I need to get an HF kit set up for at least what I'm wanting to do across the mountain kind of thing.
yeah, with the power out and the repeaters down, you'd want an HF kit.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Step one is go get your license.
Yeah, for sure.
Then find a club and start, you know, you'll get, they call them, my mind just slipped my, Elmers, they call them. They're people, they're ham radio operators that are helpful and they're everywhere. And you get in a club, they'll come out and set you up. They'll walk you through it. They'll do everything for you.
Oh, sweet.
Ham radio people tend to be very, very helpful.
Yeah. That's what we need.
I may get there yet. Well,
But yeah, I found it on the map here. The two.
choose a state. I'm gonna go to Idaho. And then,
It's Kaja.
which one is it?
Kaja.
This one.
Yep.
Okay. I don't care. Okay, where's the search? Okay. Yeah. Bunch of choices.
Gotcha. Yeah, that'll be awesome. I'll check into that.
So anyway, it's ham radio is a deep topic, but it doesn't have to be. You can get started and have these simple instructions there. And when the need hits, you can read through the instructions and make it happen.
Mhm.
Mm.
Super helpful. Anyone
Thank-
have any other questions and stuff?
We just wanted a
No.
device like our cell phone that you just punch in the number and it works.
I know.
I'm glad to know there's that video to watch and then all the information loaded on Zion that I can go through and look around and figure it out.
And just holler if you have questions.
Oh, I will be. You can count on it.
Yeah, we'll have to have like one of our retreats will just be a preparedness retreat and we'll do like ham radios and
No,
We probably could just go house to house and help everyone get set up. They won't
Yep. Yeah, that's what I mean. Like
we
we,
go practice. Yeah,
we
yeah, we
started.
pull together. I love that.
that'd be good.
Thanks so much, Neil. I really appreciate your time.
You're
Yeah, for
welcome.
Hey, Neil, how
Yeah.
much is the, since my ham radio license has expired and I unfortunately did not renew it, how much is it to renew?
I am not sure. FCC ham radio renewal, I'd have to look. I'm not sure what the requirements are. If it's
Okay.
expired.
Thanks.
Yeah, I don't, do you have to retest or can you just sign up? I think, yeah. How to
I think I have to retest.
new and expired. The good news is where you've been licensed before, those apps for studying is really straightforward.
That's good.
Okay, here's how do I do my expired license? Okay. Can renew by mail by sending form 605. Doesn't tell me. That didn't say you even had to retest.
Okay, I don't want to waste time now for you guys, but I'll look into it. Thanks.
Yeah. Should be straightforward. It looks like you don't have to do a full test. It's kind of a shortened test. And then you get credit for the rest or something.
Sweet.
And there's a 2-year grace period, it looks like, so. Depends on how long it's been expired.
Perfect. Thanks.
Okay. Okay, anybody else, any questions or?
If not, thank you so much.
All right,
Thank
thanks, everyone.
Yeah,
Okay,
we'll
It
upload
was
the piece
super
really quick.
helpful.
have a good
Thank
night.
you very much.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
See you
All right.
guys.
See you, everyone.